Hey guys, welcome back. It's Josh with the Financial Advisor Car Guy. This week we're going to talk about driver's ed. So my daughter has been in driver's ed for the last, I want to say 3 weeks. It is a 7 or 8 week program. I believe it ends during spring break here in about a month. And so she's been driving a couple days a week. She's been sitting in a class a couple days a week. And, it's fascinating because, I think about all that goes into instructing a course like this, right? So before I dive into that though, I'll tell you, driver's ed in the state of Oregon is not mandatory by any stretch, and I'm not sure that it is mandatory anywhere, but the way that it works here is the kids do get some school credit, so they get some credit hours for their high school graduation. They also get a pretty dramatic insurance break. So I talked to my insurance agent. He actually recommended, there's 2 driving schools here in town. He recommended one over the other. And so that's the one we ended up going with. And I'm really happy with it. The very first night they did kind of a parent orientation where, I go in, I sit down for an hour with all the other parents and the students. And they talk about the curriculum. They show us the textbook. They show us a couple of videos. And it's a pretty well-oiled machine. So I felt pretty confident, and my daughter has driven a few times, but not a lot, and so I would say the last couple of weeks prior to driver's ed beginning, we went out on some back roads and we did drive a little bit around town, kind of in the less populated areas, and got a feel for, entering and exiting a turn, using your blinkers, stop signs, a lot of those kind of things, so then she starts working on parking in parking lots. And anyway, her confidence has been growing. And so she's been spending a lot more time behind the wheel. Now that driver's ed is going, that's part of the deal is she drives with her instructor a couple hours a week, but then also needs to drive with mom and dad. And so, yeah, we've been doing a lot of that. We've been driving my truck and the Mach-E primarily. Basically, I explained to her that as important as it is for her to learn to drive her Eclipse, which is a manual, I think she needs to worry about the rules of the road first, meaning let's master driving as an art, then we can learn how to shift and drive the manual. Because if you're trying to learn how to shift while you're trying to navigate in an area you're unfamiliar with and you're doing all the things and you've got to watch, crosswalks and stop signs and you're doing all the things that you do when you're learning while you're trying to figure out shifting and up, downshifting and all the things that come with having a clutch. It's just a lot. And so I really wanted her to get comfortable behind the wheel of both the Mach-E and my pickup before we circle back around and spend time in the Eclipse. So yeah, I think that the textbook really teaches the basics. They're going through all sorts of things. And in fact, just this week, she was telling me that they're part of on their drive with the instructor was that they had to drive through a drive-through. So she was a little concerned. The driver's ed car is a pretty new 23, maybe 24 Volkswagen Jetta. And so it's a pretty compact car. It's not large. And prior to that lesson, she did ask me, Dad, can we drive the truck through a coffee kiosk? Can we drive through one of the drive-thrus? So we did. We actually drove to a Starbucks, and she was freaking out because the truck is pretty wide. It's a Raptor, right? So it's like 6 inches wider than a standard F-150, and it's already a pretty big truck. So we ended up not doing that one. We drove down the street a little ways to another coffee shop, a little mom and pop shop. And she did practice driving around the kiosk a couple of times. It was fine. She did great. And then she went to class. And of course, the teacher's like, hey, we're going to drive through a Starbucks drive-through. But it wasn't as big of a deal because first and foremost, she went to a different Starbucks that has a much wider drive-through. But secondly, she was in a car that was much, much smaller than my truck. So she was able to do it problem-free and is having a blast learning all this stuff. Every time they have a class, she also has to take a test at the end of the evening for all the new material. The way this works, right, is they're graded And if they don't pass something, they have an opportunity to learn why. Then they retake it again. I don't know if it's the next day or the next week or whatever it is, but they have an opportunity to understand what they got wrong and how and why, and then how to fix it. So it's pretty neat because this whole program is, as they're testing along the way and as they're logging all their driving hours, they're doing all this through the state of Oregon. It's all an accredited deal. At the end, they literally get a slip that says, okay, this student has passed driver's ed. You can take this as a student, as the youth, as a 16-year-old or 17-year-old or however old, you can take that slip into the DMV and bypass everything. They will take your photograph and hand you your driver's license right then and there. You do not have to take the behind the wheel test. You do not have to take the written test, which is crazy. But also very, very cool because you figure they've already taken the written test to get their permit. Now they're doing all this driving and practice driving and all the things that come with it with a certified licensed instructor. So it really eases the job of the DMV because the driving instructor from the driving school is the one that's essentially conducting the driving test, but they're also doing it over a series of weeks. Again, 6, 7, 8 weeks, something like that. And it's actually a pretty fabulous program. So circling back to the insurance aspect, I think that the course was about $750, which isn't inexpensive, right? Not everybody can just drop $750 to have their 16-year-old child go through a driver's ed. But, I think that where the value lies is that it is on the back end of the insurance. It's a pretty substantial savings. And I think I'm going to botch the numbers. So, and it's case by case, right? 100% case by case. But I feel like my insurance agent told me that I was going to save somewhere around $75 a month. So if I do the math, right, I paid $750 for the driving course. If I save $75 a month, in 10 months time, I'll have recouped the cost of the class and then I'll continue to save. So really, over the course of the first year, I'll save 2 months worth of $75, so about $150. And then moving forward, I'm going to save hundreds of dollars every year that she stays on our insurance. Of course, what could derail that is an accident, a ticket, whatever else. And so obviously we need to be mindful of all that. But it also reduced the stress levels of my wife and mine. It's one of those things where we get in the car. She's like a missile. She just points the car and goes. And that's not a bad thing. It's not. But at the same time, having somebody who's not mom and dad telling her what to do, turn left up here, turn right up here, slow down, speed up, don't tailgate, whatever. That means more when it comes from an instructor that's not your parent. So I think that right there is worth the money. I feel like, it has saved arguments in my household. It also gives her a car to drive when she's with that instructor. So she's not necessarily going to get too comfortable in my pickup, which is not a bad thing, again, but it gives her some variety to drive. So she's driving my wife's car, my pickup, and then the student driver car. I think overall, she's enjoying it. I think that she's got a couple of peers in the class. They have driving partners, so this is another unique thing that I didn't know about. The instructor gal told us, she said, every time your student drives, they'll be driving themselves with the teacher. And then there's a second student in the back, right? There's a passenger in the back who's watching and learning and navigating and doing all the things. And then midway through the lesson, they park, they switch seats. And now the student that was sitting in the back moves up to the driver's seat and then they drive for the next hour or whatever it is. So it gives some different perspectives because, when you're navigating through town, it's one thing. When you're navigating on the highway or when you're merging or exiting or going over an overpass or, whatever, there's a number of things. There's some benefits to seeing it twice, right? Behind the wheel and as a passenger. And so I think from the instructor's point of view, there's a huge benefit to them sharing drive time and also learning while they're in the car. It's a no cell phone operation. So, The kids are not allowed to have their phones in the car. Even in class, they are not allowed to use their phones in class. They want 100% dedication. They do not want any distractions. Obviously, it's illegal to text and drive or be on your phone in the car. So they've taken it one step further and said, even when you're in the back on the passenger, as you're a passenger, no cell phones, no cell phone use at all. This is a very serious thing. And so I appreciate that. And again, the last couple of weeks, as she's done her driver's ed courses, during the week, if we're running out to dinner or running to the grocery store, she's like, Dad, can I drive? Yeah, we're letting her. Once, again, she's getting a lot more comfortable. She's doing a lot better. We're working on parking and those kind of things. But yeah, for the most part, she's a pretty solid driver for now. I think one thing that, I don't know where I was going with that. There was a point I was trying to make. I think that there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. And I don't want her to become too confident too quickly because, there's a lot that can go wrong, right? Sometimes, again, the conversation is such that when it's a instructor, they can say, hey, you're driving too fast, or hey, don't stop too quickly, or whatever it is. And I feel like as the parent, I'm just kind of that naggy dad that's trying to get her to slow down or not stop so quickly. And so like this afternoon was a great example. We're driving and the light's red and she's not slowing down about the point I would have started to slow down. And there's an SUV stopped at the crosswalk. There's only one car in front of us, but they're stopped at the red light. And she comes flying up on him and then slams on her brakes. And I'm like, Emma, slow down faster, please. You're going to hurt somebody if you don't. And she goes, yeah, I didn't realize that they were totally stopped and da-da-da-da-da. It's fine. It's learning. And that's it. And I explained to her, I said, listen, I'm not mad. I just want you to be aware. I want you to practice, have good habits. You need to make sure that you're not scaring people, right? Like getting too close to them too quickly. You're flying up on them and slamming on your brakes. As a passenger, it's concerning, but for that guy in that SUV or that lady in the SUV, if they look in their mirror and see you just barreling towards them, it's frightening. And then after dinner, it was dark out and whatnot. And so I ended up driving us home and somebody blew through a stop sign. And what happened, it was right literally on the same street as her driving school. We're chatting as we're driving and I'm going through an intersection. I didn't have a stop sign, but the cross traffic did. Well, the person on my left came through the stop sign. I think they thought I was going to stop, like I had at my four-way. I slowed down, so they came into the intersection and then slammed on their brakes, realizing what they had done. And I kind of went through because I didn't have a stop sign. So I kind of waved at them on my way through. And I turned to Emma and I'm like, so that right there's a good example, like why you have to remain alert and you can't be distracted, because if I didn't see that person wasn't going to stop, there's a very good likelihood we would have intersected in that intersection. And, one of us could have gotten hurt, right? The cars would have been hit. And so I feel like real life examples happen all the time, but I take that for granted. You probably take that for granted because we drive every day, we drive everywhere we need to go. But the moment you're starting to associate to somebody who's learning, it just changes everything. And it's not for the worse. It's not. It's actually a pretty good thing because I feel like I'm a little more hyper aware. But at the same time, I want to set a good example. So no phone usage, no, whatever, because I want to make sure that she sees that it is a serious thing. So anyway, driver's ed, it's been going well. It's been going good. We have a few more weeks. Once that's done, she gets her driver's license and she's just jacked about that. One of the things she had to have prior was her permit, okay? Well, she wasn't real fast to getting her permit. So, she's got friends that are younger than her that already have their license. She's gonna be 17 in June and she feels like she's a little bit late to the game. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think from a maturity standpoint, waiting a little bit's a good thing. Plus, she was really weird about her car. She doesn't want to drive her car, or she didn't want to drive her car until it was absolutely perfect. And I mean, as you guys know, we've been working on it on and off for like a year and a half, and we keep adding things and doing little things here and there. And she didn't necessarily want to get her license until her car was ready, and she didn't want to drive her car until she had her license. So it was kind of this weird, like, we got to do it all at the same time. So here we are. The car is done. It's ready to go. She can drive at any time. She's going through driver's ed. She'll have her license here in another, we'll call it 6 weeks. And, things are good. But that's really all I got for you guys this week. I just wanted to share my experience with it. I think all in all, driver's ed's a positive thing. And if you've got kids that are teenagers that you're investigating this for, I would seriously look at it. Yes, there's an expense, but if you talk to your insurance folks and you can get a little bit of a break on your premium, it's going to pay for itself in time. And again, it's really important for these kids to learn this stuff from somebody who's not mom and dad. I didn't have that. I didn't go through driver's ed. In fact, I kind of taught myself. We lived on some acreage. We had very bare roads near our place. And so I had a manual car. I actually drove an S10 Blazer, and it was a 4-speed. And so I basically would just figure it out. And then I would branch out a little bit and drive outside the neighborhood and a little further into town, et cetera, et cetera. And I figured it out. And, I didn't have driver's ed. My dad would ride with me occasionally. My mom would maybe get in the car once in a while, but it wasn't something where they were sitting there instructing me. They were just kind of like, okay, there's nobody on the roads. You're safe. Go ahead and go. If you have a problem, like walk home or whatever. It was not kind of pre cell phones. So yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then just walk home or, whatever the case is. So not a huge deal. I mean, I figured it out, and I know she'll do the same thing. She'll figure things out as she goes. But again, having that instruction, having that hands-on, not just the book knowledge, not just the hand holding, but somebody there is like a cheerleader to say, okay, great, you're doing well, but also stop up here or whatever. So it's good. It's great. We're pleased with it. Again, worth the money. But I'll probably report back to you guys at some point. Maybe once she has her license, we'll do another update about how driver's ed wrapped up and what that process looked like. But in the meantime, like I said, that's all I got for you guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and most importantly, remember, may every investment you make be a good one. Till next time.